So body's adjusted, appropriate position. So the subtler energies can flow freely, smoothly. The long term is necessary. Body back upright. Jaw relaxed, hips apart, head tilted forward, chin tucking, chin to the chakra behind the top chin, eyes looking down, as if you're looking along the nose towards the ground, breathing through your nose. So we just think through these steps, basically it's thinking. We create karma with our thoughts. We create negative karma with our thoughts, so we purify it by, we purify it by thinking positive thoughts. It really is as simple as that, as a principle. It's just that we think it's harder because we believe in a bad, self-existent me, so stuck and frozen. Just have it. So we change our thoughts. Slowly, 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 day by day, step by step. That is what practice is. So the first step is to acknowledge the negative things we've done. We've discussed an action that's called negative is defined by its harming another. But why it's negative when I do it, why I create negative karma, isn't because I do it, it's because of the motivation. The wish to harm, the anger, the attachment. That's what causes it to put a negative imprint in my mind. So we regret, for our sake, the planting of these negative seeds. Because why? Because it's being seeds that will ripen in the future is my suffering experience. And I know with absolute certainty, by looking at my life now, I don't want further suffering. If I can think about the possibility of suffering realms, then use that as well. Not wanting that. Practical issue, not a moralistic one. So what do we regret? We can go through this like checklist, these 10 bullet points. First 3 are the body. And you can see there's not that many things you can do with your body that harm others. Killing is the worst, obviously. Harming with your body in other ways, punching, harming, hurting, torturing. Then there's attachment, family attachment, sexual attachment, using the body to harm others. And taking things that don't belong. These are the things that bodies do. So we've created karma with these actions. All motivated by the wish to harm or attachment, one or the other. It's not complicated. Because I is always the reference point for everything we do. In our deluded, in our mistake, in our wish to be happy, and our mistaken understanding of what causes happiness, we have harmed others. So we regret it. So we think, whatever I have done since the beginning of this time, to harm a sentient being with my body, the killing, the abortion, the fishing, the creatures, the mosquitoes, the rats, the cockroaches, whatever, this life, infinite past life, any action I've ever done since the beginning of this time, killing, harming, taking, abusing with my body because of attachment, all of these actions, since the beginning of this time, that have left these trillions of infants in my mind that haven't yet ripened. Plenty of them have ripened already, so they're too late. But the ones that haven't ripened yet, you've got to get ahead of the game. So we regret. Because, not guilt, which is, oh, I'm bad, I'm terrible. That's not the issue at all. Like eating poison. You immediately regret it. What a fool, what an idiot. Because you don't want the suffering. That's what we have to get used to, thinking that way. It's for our own sake. Because I don't want you to suffer. Sick of suffering. So in the depths of my heart, regretting every one of these actions. Then the actions of my speech, probably the most of us maybe, the main ones. 4 of these, well, I'm probably by variation, saying things that aren't true, which is like a conscious lie. It's always for the self. Misleads others. And maybe we can think, it's not in the list of 10, but all that speculating we do, all that seemingly intelligent talk that we do, that we think we know the answers and we think we're saying the truth. We read this, I read that, that says this, it is this is that. Acting like we're speaking the truth when we haven't checked our sources. We're not showing that we're doubting, but acting like we know what we're talking about. This is one of our commonest mistakes, especially we're so educated. Even if it's just not philosophical things, just, oh, she did this and he did that and he went there. Yes, he did this. I heard he said this. You say it like you know the truth. Haven't checked the sources. We do so much of this. Yes, it is that we say. We don't know it's true, but we say it with certainty. We don't think we're lying, but we're misleading people terribly. All of this, I regret. Sometimes hearing other people talk is like drowning. Can't find anything to hold on to. You know there's something of that. And the harsh speech, that's clear how it comes. The rabbiting on, just chatter, nervous chatter. Makes people tired. Doesn't help. All the talking behind backs, criticising others all the time. All of this. I regret all of this. Regrets in my heart. I don't want the karmic result. The environmental ones, which is to do with speech. It's about things grown. It's about dirty, ugly, broken, paranoia, things to fear. All of this is the karmic result of speech. And then just the result personally, people not trusting me, people not giving respect to my words, people abusing me, being surrounded by violence and abuse. It's obvious I don't want these. So clear. I regret. Whatever I've done with my speech to harm sentient beings since the beginning of this time. So then we think about thoughts. Now, first of all, those of us who've got vows, we have to regret all of those. Regret the breaking of our Patimoksha vows, Bodhisattva vows, Candid vows, commitments, word of honour. Absolutely regrets in my heart, because I don't want to be cut off from the Dharma. Don't want to have, lose the Dharma in the future, or lose contact with it, lose contact with my teachers, with the Buddha. Don't want that. Deeply regrets in my heart. And then our delusions, and thoughts. We can think of the 3 main ones: the craving, the wrong views, the narrow-mindedness, the ill will. But also, the main habits like the jealousy, the depression, the low self-esteem, the anxiety. Whatever you know in your own mind, deeply regretful. Look at the pain it causes me. And it's the source of the things I do with my body and speech behind my body. Absolutely regretful of you. Sick of the suffering. Sick of the misery. So I'm going to turn to you. He's the doctor. Give me the medicines, the techniques, the tools that I can use to purify my mind. Return to the earth. So above our heads we imagine, in the Bodhisattva aspect, the Sambhavakaya aspect, the subtle light body, the enjoyment body, our Lama manifested. Radiant, blissful Bodhisattva energy, so blissful. Prana of youth, 16, looking gorgeous, blissful, energizing, radiant white light body. Bodhisattva style. Long hair, partially held over a top notch, the rest hanging down his back. This 5-pointed kind of tiara-like crown on the front of his head. Beautiful face, very blissful eyes, very compassionate. Decorated with all jewels like an Indian style, royal aspect. Throat, upper arms, wrists, ankles, feet. Silken clothes, sitting in full lotus position. Right leg in front of left. On a white lotus. Everything radiant light. Nothing substantial like a statue. The mind of my Lama. Only my benefit. Now it's covered with compassion. Before it was like compassion for ourselves, now it's compassion for others. It's suffering sentient beings we rely upon to generate that compassion. All those we've harmed and those who've harmed us. Everyone. Absolutely, if I don't work for their benefit, who will? My job. I know what suffering's like. I know what theirs is like. I must benefit them. Must purify the rest of it. So then, we now visualize Vajrasattva sending this nectar. But before that, we visualize at his brow a white Om, at his throat a red R, at his heart a blue Kung. And the light goes out from his Kung, hooking the energy of all the wisdom beings. We sort of think that this visualization is just kind of pretend. It's our visualization. So now we've got to invite the actual Buddhas in the universe to all come and absorb into it, kind of make it real, inviting the wisdom beings. This light goes out to all the 10 directions, hooking the energy of all the Buddhas of the universe, all the Vajrasattva. His energy comes back and then comes and absorbs back into his heart, making him even more radiant, more blissful, now full of all the energy of all the beings in the universe, all the Buddhas. And then he very happily sends this powerful hose of energy, a white nectar from his heart that arcs around, enters our crown and fills us very forcefully, forcing out to all of our orifices, all the imprint, all the harm we've ever done since living this time with our bodies in the form of sort of filthy liquid. Really imagine, whooshing out, so content. No choice, out, gone, disappeared into space. No Vajrasattva samaya manu palaya Vajrasattva teno patita dido mebawa suto kayo mebawa supo kayo mebawa anurakto mebawa sarva siddhi memprayata sawa kama sutsame sitam shriyam kuru hum ha 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 ho bhagavan sarva tathagata vajramame mutsa vajrabhava mahasamaya sattva ahum pe Om Vajrasattva samaya manu palaya Vajrasattva teno patita adido mebawa sutokayo mebawa supokayo mebawa anorakto mebawa sarva siddhi mempayata sawa kama sutsame sitam shriyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan sarva tathagata vajramame nusa vajrabhava mahasamaya sattva ahum pe. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido Mebawa Supokayo Mebawa Supokayo Mebawa Anorakto Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayata Sawakama Suttame Sitam Shriyam Puruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mukta Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ha Hum He Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bawa, supokayo me bawa, supokayo me bawa, anorakto me bawa, sarva siddhi memprayasa, sawa kama sutsame, sitam shriyam kuruhum, ha 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 ho bhagavan, sarva tathagata vajramani mukta vajrabhava mahasamaya sattva, ha hum he. For this nectar, all the negative energy of our bodies, actually the imprints of our negative physical actions, gone completely. Imagine. Now Lama Vajrasattva very happily again sends his nectar from his crown, with his heart that arcs around, enters our crown, fills us completely, forcing up to the top, all the imprints of all the negativity of our speech, disappearing into space in the top part of our body, all sorts of things. Not one atom left. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bawa Sutokayo me bawa Sutokayo me bawa Anorakto me bawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayasa Sawakama Sutsame Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum He Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bawa Sutokayo me bawa Supokayo me bawa Anorakto me bawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayasa Sawakama Sutsame Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum He Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bawa Supokayo me bawa Supokayo me bawa Anorakto me bawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayasa Sawakama Sutsame Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum He. Now, the mind, the delusion, ego grasping, the root delusion that clings to the inherent me, that gives rise to the grasping of the impermanent me, which gives rise to the attachment of all this, all the causes of all the nightmares, suffering. Light comes from Lama Vajrasattva's heart that arcs around, enters our heart, enters our crown, instantly fills it and annihilates these delusions. Not one animal. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bawa Supokayo me bawa Supokayo me bawa Anorakto me bawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayasa Sawakama Sutsame Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum He Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bawa Supokayo me bawa Supokayo me bawa Anorakto me bhava sarva siddhi me prayasa savakama sutsame sitam shriyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan sarva tathagata vajramami mutsa vajrabhava mahasamaya sattva ahum he Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido me bhava Supokayo me bhava Supokayo me bhava Anorakto me bhava sarva siddhi me prayasa savakama sutsame sitam shriyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum He. now, having removed even all the obstacles to our liberation, we now have to remove even more the obstacles to omniscience, where we combine bodhicitta with emptiness. More work to do, more subtle influence to be removed from the mind, bring even more power, more capacity, more and more realization. Buddha. So this time is through together. Nectar coming down, going up, and the light, moving in the subtle thinking. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Cheno Pratita Dido Mebawa Suto Kayo Mebawa Suko Kayo Mebawa Anurakto Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Mempayata Sawa Kama Sutsame Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Chatagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Te Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Cheno Pratita Dido mebawa, sutokayo mebawa, sutokayo mebawa, anurakto mebawa, sarva siddhi memprayata, sawa kama sutsame, sitam shriyam kuruhum, ha 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 ho bhagavan, sarva chachagata vajramami gutsa vajrabhava mahasamaya sattva ahum pe. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Chenopatita Dido mebawa, sutokayo mebawa, sutokayo mebawa, Anurakto mebawa sarva siddhi memprayata sawa kama sutsame sitam shriyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan sarva chachagata vajramami mutsa vajrabhava mahasamaya sattva ahum te. So now the fourth step is decision to change. So if we've taken vows and we just continue to reiterate those, and we do this every day, then it's not surprising that we wake up next life with no imprint to kill, no imprint to lie, steal. This is how it works. We're programming, practicing, changing our minds, developing new habits. Simple as that. We make it more complicated, but it's as simple as that. It's our mind that does it. The more we understand the first step, which is the more we understand karma, the more easy it is to understand this decision to change. This is what makes us change, step by baby step. If we've taken vows, reiterate those really strongly. I will never break my vows. I will never break my bodhisattva vows, etc. Haven't taken vows, and we make decisions in relation to these actions of body and speech, and then the decisions about our mind, according to our capacity. Make some decisions. I will not this, I will not that, for certain periods. We're talking here minimum level of refraining from harming. We're not discussing actively benefiting others yet, actively practicing compassion yet. This is basic, fundamental refraining from doing negative, which itself is so powerful. The old habits of the body and speech, and then we can make some decisions about that. Beginning to change the habits of our mind according to our capacity. And we're talking to ourselves. We're being our own best friend here. And our Lama Vajrasattva very delighted with us, all the hard work we're making, doing, becoming a Buddha, my king. He dissolves into, very happily, dissolves into white light, emerges through our crown, with our body-speaking mind, becoming oneness with our body-speaking mind. Just staying up the space, clear, blissful, radiant, vast, spacious, and bliss. Relaxing. So just to use up a bit of time before lunch, we can discuss refuge. So we think about the purpose of rebirth. Energizes and not want to waste it. We get into junior school grade 1 and we think about impermanence, particularly death, which galvanizes into action to increase our wish not to waste it. And then we think of the likely possibilities of the types of rebirth, and we think about those suffering possibilities, and we absolutely do not want it, so that we increase our wish to not waste time. Then we think, well, who can I turn to? Any methods to know how to avoid this type of rebirth? And we turn to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, refuge. What's that mean? Well, we've been looking at that as the first step, here. So here, we need to, we're looking for taking all these steps, we're looking for a person who can give us the methods to avoid this type of suffering rebirth. So we take refuge in. We go for refuge, as they say. Is the term they use in Buddhism. Take refuge in. To rely upon. And so here we're discussing the Buddha. They talk about absolute Buddha, relative Buddha. Then we talk about the Dharma, absolute Dharma, relative Dharma, and then absolute Sangha, relative Sangha. The three jewels that has become known in Buddhism. So we've been discussing already this so-called absolute Buddha is Dharmakaya. So if we think simply, we've got a body and we have a mind. So when your mind is fully developed, when your mind is a Buddha mind, when your mind is free of all the pollution, which is what we're visualizing in this practice, when your mind is fully developed, when you've done all the wisdom wing, all the compassion wing, you've absolutely removed even an atom of negativity, not an atom of negativity left in your mind, which is exactly what Buddha says you can do, then your mind is fully developed. That's a Buddha mind. That consciousness, which is not physical anyway, necessarily pervades space. How can it be confined? By space or time or matter, if you think of it. It necessarily is wherever there is existence. It cognizes that which exists. This is the nature of it. It's known as, in the Sanskrit, this term, Dharmakaya. Technically here known as truth body. A bit abstract. for our minds. That's the name they give, but never mind. Or absolute Buddha. Or, if you like, actual Buddha. That's the actual Buddha. But what good is that to sentient beings? We can't communicate with it. So out of compassion, which is what drives a Buddha, which is how come a being has become a Buddha, which is what driven them for countless lives, is compassion. And then the bodhicitta that has caused them to never stop working on themselves to become a Buddha, so they can be of benefit to sentient beings, having the wisdom to know how and the power to do so. So then they manifest in bodies. That's the rupa kaya. That's the relative Buddha, the form in which that mind manifests as a regular person, looking like a regular person. But in reality, a Buddha mind. So the relative Buddha, in this case, in this context, is the form we know of as Shakyamuni Buddha of 2,500 years ago, Mr. Buddha. He's the relative Buddha. And that's the one we need, because we can't communicate with the absolute mind. We can't communicate with subtle consciousness. We're not capable. So out of kindness and compassion, that mind manifests. In this case, our relative Buddha is Mr. Buddha of 2,500 years ago, whose teachings we are listening to. He's the historical Buddha of this time. It's the relative Buddha. That's what we need to rely upon. Now you've got absolute Dharma and relative Dharma. So Dharma, simply speaking here, is you could say, is the word used to refer to the experiential knowledge of reality in that mind. So if you think of absolute music, you think of Bach. The actual music is the knowledge in his mind. The actual music is the musical knowledge in his mind. The actual music, that's in his mind. But that's no good to us. We're just sitting looking at Bach. We can't hear all that music. We can't learn to be our own Bach. So what does he do? Out of great kindness, he writes it on little notes on paper. So we can then, he has to do that for us because we can't communicate with his mind. So he writes it on paper so that we can access our music. We can become our own Bach. Same here. The actual knowledge in the mind of the Buddha, but not just the Buddha. They say the absolute Dharma is the knowledge in the minds of all superior beings. It's a term they use, and it's a whole spectrum of levels of knowledge. So from the very first moment of your direct, non-conceptual insight into emptiness, in that first second, you are labelled a superior being. You've got way to go to become a Buddha, stages to get through. But that's superior being. So all the knowledge in the mind, the actual experiential knowledge in the minds of superior beings, that's the absolute Dharma. We can't communicate with that. So, how kind, they speak words. That's this power of speech business. Absolutely vital. You could have Buddha looking at you very nice for 25 years, like Bach, but you can't learn anything until he starts speaking. So speech is stupendous, is vital, is absolutely crucial to anything, to hear the words which express the knowledge in that mind. This is how we conceive that our speech is just garbage speech. Everything comes with the sounds coming out that have no meanings. No wonder we're all confused and crazy on this earth. Can you imagine having the power of speech? Such that every word you utter is a benefit to who hears it. This is the speech of the holy being. Amazing. So the speech of the Buddha is the Dharma, the relative Dharma, which means in books, iPads, iPods, tapes, you name it, videos. That's the relative Dharma. And that's what we need badly. Then we can become our own Buddha. The lovely term in Tibetan, His Holiness's name, Tenzin, knowledge holder. That's the second. That's the third one. The absolute Sangha. No, the second one, sorry. Oh. No, the third one. The Sangha. The absolute Sangha is those very superior beings, all the way from the first moment of emptiness to Buddha. That's all the group of superior beings. That's the actual Sangha. The actual knowledge holders who've got that knowledge. They're the actual Sangha, the actual spiritual community. So you could, so then, but again, you don't know what, that could be the beggar down the road. You can't tell. They're bopping on, these great bodhisattvas are bopping around the world all over the place, manifesting here and there as a dog and a this and a that. You can't tell they're superior beings by looking at them. So the relative spiritual community is represented by the ordained Sangha, the monastics. So strictly speaking, according to Lord Buddha's Vinaya, the criterion of the existence of the Dharma in one place is the presence of 4 fully ordained people. This is why there's a story in Tibet. They were, at some point, some king, some naughty king, was king everybody, didn't like Dharma, and they were running out of Sangha, and you need a quota, a quorum, what is it called? Whatever. You need at least 10 fully ordained people in an ordination to ordain more monks. In those cases, monks, they didn't have nuns. So they were running out of people, so they had to snuck over the border from China, one of the monks from there, so they could have their number, so they could keep ordinations going, which meant keeping the Dharma alive in Tibet, because they needed at least 4 fully ordained. It was running out otherwise. And that, in gratitude to that Chinese monk, they must have worn blue at the time, I don't know. We have this blue thing here. That's what I heard. Out of respect to that. Gratitude to that Chinese monk. So the presence in any one place, how would they define a place, I'm not sure. Country, who knows what the borders are, I don't know. The criterion of the presence of Dharma is at least 4 fully ordained people, but the real criterion is the presence of actual knowledge holders, which is why we need to have meditators. That's what makes it a holy place. I remember interviewing Venerable Rene, a Swiss monk, one of Lama Buddha's students, a long-term meditator, about his retreat at Saling Lama Yeshe Center in Spain, in the mountains beyond, out of Granada. And it's a wonderful place. And His Holiness was there in 82, and he blessed it. And he said it reminded him of Tibet. It was so lovely. He called it Saling, place of clear light. And I remember Rene meditated there for 18 months or something in one of his many single point of concentration meditation retreats. And he said he couldn't get past beyond the 5th of the 9 stages of single point of concentration. And so he was telling me this. I was interviewing him from Mandalay in 95 about his retreats. And I was interviewing him at Kopan Monastery, which is a busy place. People have been there. It's in the valley in Kathmandu, up on the hill, out of road enough, but said to be Kathmandu. All the lamas will say Kathmandu is so blessed. That's what the ordinary view is a really polluted dump, But all the Tibetans just love Kathmandu, don't they? It's such a holy place. All these stories of how it first even came, all these wonderful stories, these big stupas. They just love Kathmandu. They say it's so blessed. With the energy of holy beings is what they mean, which means it's more subtle. Now what's interesting with Rene, he said, when I interviewed him in Kopan, it's much more busy. You can hear all the dogs barking, you hear from the valley, you can hear the Hindus, all the prayers in the morning, big loud, because they offer their prayers to Shiva or somebody as loud as possible at 5 in the morning. Whatever. And all these noises, people, things, dogs. But Rene said, this is an interesting point, his mind became, in meditation, more subtle, more easily at Kopan. Whereas where he was in Spain, it was up in the mountains, completely silent, but it wasn't such a holy, blessed place then. So this is a very interesting point. They say one of the main prerequisites for a proper, serious retreat is to be in a place that's blessed by the presence, has been blessed by the presence of previous meditators. So that's knowledge holders. And that's what makes a place really a Dharma place. So the Sangha, the absolute Sangha is those actual superior beings, the knowledge holders, who've got the experiential knowledge, not just the words, the experiential knowledge in their mind. They're the real spiritual community. But we don't recognize them, so we have to have the relative Sangha, which is the monastic. They might be peanuts. I think who these monks and nuns think they are. But this is what Buddha says. He really stresses this, why monasticism is really seen as a fundamental necessity for the existence of Dharma in the world. Buddha Dharma Sangha. They call them the 3 jewels. So, they use the analogy, you rely upon the doctor, and then there's medicine, which is the Dharma, and then, of course, you need your supporters, your spiritual community. So in the world, of course, we say, our Sangha. It's used a lot now, and we usually mean our spiritual community, literally our friends around who come to the centre. But technically, the meaning of the word as one of the 3 jewels is the fully ordained people. Not even novices, but fully ordained monks and nuns. That's the Sangha, actual relative Sangha. So we rely upon. This is what we rely upon, obviously. So it's just the same. If you want to learn music, you need a decent musician, the Buddha. If you need the music, you need your music friends supporting you, around you. It's natural. It's obvious. It's reasonable. You want to play football. You don't hang around with cricketers, do you? Hang around with football players. They're your community. Makes sense. These we rely upon. So of course, to do your research, you better check the Buddha's a valid person. You better read, listen, go to places, read his books, read the words, check up. It's to be seriously confident in the Buddha. Forget the one of being confident in a teacher who teaches Buddha to put the Buddha first, which is our first step. You might find a great teacher you like, but his teaching is rubbish. What good is that? So we really got to have confidence in him. And we don't have such intelligent clarity about these things. We just don't leap in and like it. Oh, yeah, I like that. Wow, far out. That sounds nice. We're so wishy-washy when it comes to spiritualism. Really shocking. We've got to really use our common sense, use our noggins, think about it, listen to it, look at it, analyse it, understand it. And then when we're ready, we can formalise that taking refuge. We formally take refuge in the Buddha. So what I'd say, they say the prerequisites for formally taking refuge are two. And if you use the analogy here of a doctor, it's very reasonable. Using the analogy of having taken poison. This is the business of refuge. This is the understanding of it in relation to Buddha and karma. But I have to have confidence. First I have to know I don't want to suffer. I've got to know I don't want to suffer. I've got to be horrified at the thought of the suffering that will come from that poison. That's obvious. If I've never taken poison, then I've got to have a good doctor, okay? Now, I might have heard about the best doctor on earth who has antidotes to every poison, but I haven't taken poison. I'm not going to care, am I? But when I've taken poison, hey, where was that doctor? Iceland? I'm going. So you've got to have wanting. They say you've got to have fear. That sounds so weird to us. You've got to really not want to have the suffering consequences, which means you've got to think about it, which is why we talked in the Lam Rim, that point. You've got to think about it. It's a tough one for us. Think about how you don't want suffering and how my actions cause it. That is the motivator for wanting to go to a doctor. Then you've got to be confident you've got a decent doctor. And that's just your research. That's what it means here. You've got to have decent prerequisites. So when you're confident about that, then you can turn to the Buddha, rely upon the Buddha, and you formalise your taking refuge. But I would say another thing. So that confidence, okay, for us in our culture, we've either been materialists or we've been Christians. We say most of us, maybe Muslims don't believe, but believe in a creator. So I would say we've got to be very content, very comfortable with the idea of a non-creator. If we've got a strong feeling of something universal, something out there, and we think of it as a creator energy, then you're not a Buddhist. It's a very particular kind of view to have. And some people might like Buddha, but you have a feeling of creator, and you're not a Buddhist. Don't take refuge in Buddha. That's silly. You have a comfortable feeling about that idea, superior mind, all-knowing, all that business, but not creator. And of course, if you feel you can become a Buddha, and that concept makes sort of sense to you. Have confidence in the teaching, which means faith. Confide, with faith, but based on intelligence, based on your research, because you have to be confident. You have to be confident. This is a really major point. I remember one time at Vajrasattva, which is one of the only FMT centre, I think, in the world, part of this organisation. It's actually a college, a university, Vajrasattva in Portland. And one of the people studying very seriously there, studying all the philosophy. And then, of course, in all the teachings, like, Al was saying, my Nyingma friends say this. It's going to be this way, inevitably. Every tradition, even in Tibet, they teach different ways. And so one of the commonest feelings we have about religion, we think, well, who do I believe? How do I know who to believe, we will say. Well, nobody is who you believe. You have to work it out. You have to decide whom you're going to trust. You have to. 50 million people can tell you Jesus is right. If you don't have faith, forget it. It doesn't help. But you have to do the work. You have to be confident. You have to check up on the Buddhist teachings, on the places where you go, on what they teach, and so on. You have to be confident. You have to be confident. And that takes time. Because we're of us, not Buddha. And we're intellectually lazy. We'd rather blindly believe. We'd rather follow the crowd. And when the crowd changes direction, we change direction. It's just too superficial. We have much more intelligence and more confidence. And we are the boss. There's no question about this as far as Buddhism is concerned. So when you take refuge, you're committing to certain things. You have commitments and you have vows. They're two things. Vows have got a particular kind of very powerful, something strong about a vow. Vows are normally decisions to not do something. And a commitment is usually a decision to do something, generally. So there's two things here. There's taking refuge formally. And when you do that, you commit to several things. You commit to, there's actually 6 things, I think. You commit to at least reiterate your refuge 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night. A little prayer, even just saying, I take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, 3 times. You keep that. You're committing to, in relation to the Buddha, you're committing to have respect for all images of the Buddha. Not in a superstitious sense, but an image of the Buddha, like a picture or a statue, is not, well, if you have real faith, it is the Buddha. You know, in Tibet you hear about all these stories of statues walking and talking and growing and speaking to people. People have such, the Tibetans have such faith in the Buddha, you know. The Buddha pops up all over the place. So you have respect for all the images that represent the Buddha for your sake. The statue doesn't mind. You don't have a materialist view like you put your green tara over there because it suits you wearing green curtains and that kind of thing. You don't prefer the gold one because it's more valuable than the other one. You really have a kind of, try to keep a very pure view about all the images. They all represent Buddha. It's a very important kind of attitude to have, not to see it as art. I always tell this story that one of my sisters, you know, for the Buddhists, there's a real sense of respect. They always put them up high. You don't put them down low. You wouldn't put it down on the ground. It's considered like shocking, you know, not to be superstitious about it. But I remember when I first became a nun, went back to see my sister, Julie. She's not my sister. And Julie just been to Thailand and had this very nice Buddha head. You know how they have the heads. And so she was using it as a doorstop. You know, so for Buddhists that's like shocking, right? So I'm looking at it, I pick it up and I go, oh, Julie, what a lovely Buddha head, you know. And I put it on the mantelpiece. Then next year I come and there it is as a doorstop. For years it went on like this. You know, I'd pick it up, oh, Julie, what a lovely Buddha head. Then one year I come and there's no doorstop and I say, oh, where's the Buddha head, Julie? She said, oh, there it is. Isn't it a nice piece of art, she said, you know. It was very interesting. It took kind of, I mean, very briefly to give her a lecture. I wouldn't do that. Anyway, very interesting. So it's an attitude, again, got nothing to do with the Buddha head. It's me. You know, it's my benefit. Because if I respect it, it's because all of image is a reminder of what you can become. There's nothing to do with, you know, this way the Jewish thing was, because they were, you know, what do you call things, idols, that kind of thing. It's just a representation of the Buddha, reminds you of the Buddha. And we understand that. You have people, pictures of a family around. Of course you'd respect them. You wouldn't just chuck it on the ground, would you? You'd be insulted. You put it up nicely on the mantelpiece again. So it's an attitude for one's own benefit. Then you have in relation to the Dharma the same attitude, respect for the words. They're your precious, precious medicine, like your valuable tools. So to really have respect for them. And it does bring a real benefit to your mind, you know. You treat with great respect. So Tibetans always put them up high. And they put the Dharma higher even than the images of the Buddha, because the Dharma is the real refuge. You can have very handsome looking Buddhas in front of you, but if you don't know their words, can't hear their words, you don't have the Dharma. You don't have the method. And then according to the Sangha, in relation to the Sangha, you respect those who live in vows. Whether you like them or not is another discussion. Because they're living in the vows, they're keeping the Dharma alive in one place. You're committing also to try and have love for sentient beings and not harm them. You're not taking a vow not to kill them yet, not yet. You're committing to continue to study and grow your, you know, things like this. It's not all of it, it's pretty much like that. You're committing to this. Your commitments, like when you take refuge formally, you take it in front of somebody who represents the Buddha, who becomes one of your kind of, well, depending, okay, whatever. You take so you're committing, like you're shaking hands, like a contract, you know. You try to keep your commitment, you don't break your word of honour. Then also, on top of that, when you take refuge, it's common, but you can also take the lay vows. And there's a particular set of 5 lay vows, taking 4 from those 10, 3 from the body, the 3 of the body, and 1 of the speech, and then 1 added one of no alcohol. As Al discussed this one. The lamas, generally it's always given as not having any alcohol. You don't have to take all the vows, you can take any of those 5. But His Holiness often gives it in general public as not getting inebriated. But also I've noticed these days, he even gives the killing one. Normally the vow, okay, you've got 5 vows, all right? You've got the vow not to kill, which is a commitment to never intentionally kill a living being, human or animal. You break in a major way if you kill a human intentionally, and you break in a minor way if you kill other creatures intentionally. Intentionally is the point, because intention is karma, remember? You have a vow, and then sometimes these days His Holiness, when he gives it in big groups, he gives it to only not kill humans. He leaves, because he knows most Westerners can't stop killing other creatures, which is a bit tragic. So better not to have the vow and break it than to break it. So at least you commit to not kill humans. You put some deep imprint in the mind with the vow. Quick, go to lunch. I'm so sorry. Let's finish the vows. No, we'll do it after lunch. Late, so sorry. We'll continue after lunch. So you do your discussion group again, please. Take whatever topic, go into a big thing, blah, 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 answer some questions. At 2 o'clock, 3 to 3. Think of your lunch differently as usual, empty, full of bliss, offered all the beings, may they experience the joy of receiving, and eat it with a happy mind, so we can't never give up. And help these things. Be a Buddha to get this everything. Lama Sangha Lama Che, Reji Nama Gedam Che, Kungi Deva Lama Che, Lama Nama Che, Pabu. Thank you. See you soon.